Circus Shalevsky, and I'm the body for the Joker.
Sorry about before, you know. The running away. That was rude of me. You'll be happy to know I won't be running anymore.
I play Sonya and Katana.
I play Green Lantern.
I play Superman.
I play Batman, Deathstroke the Terminator, and now recently I'm playing Shao Kahn as well.
I'm playing Liu Kang of the Mortal Kombat crew.
On the MK side, Scorpion and Kano.
So I'm playing Catwoman and Wonder Woman, and to play both of them is completely amazing to me. Wonder Woman, very much more regal, and I don't think there's that same sense of humor. You know, she's very much about keeping the integrity and, you know, solving that crime and preventing the bad guys from winning.
I was assigned Sonya and Katana. I was excited, you know, Mortal Kombat. Oh, everyone knows Mortal Kombat, but I had never played Mortal Kombat. So I called up a friend saying, you know, this Sonya and Katana, what are they like? Oh, Sonya's the coolest. Sonya's like this and this and this. I'm like, oh, wow. Obviously, these are popular characters. I was very excited to hear all about them from the designers, from the writers, and be able to give the characters life.
Then you have Catwoman, who completely has the sass and the attitude and the sarcasm.
Easy, boys. Let's keep our eye on the prize.
So that's been really fun to kind of climb into the world of Catwoman and at the same time to be that Amazonian, you know, Wonder Woman.
When I auditioned, I was more familiar with the DC characters, and I had a feeling from the script of what those would be, even though they were trying to hide that it was Catwoman and Wonder Woman.
Hand it over, sexy villainess.
I'm sorry, no can do. I'm protecting it.
When they had us audition for the video game, they hadn't announced it to the press yet, so we were reading for these just sort of generic character names.
All right, crazy villain. You wanted me. I'm here.
Well, if it ain't masked vigilante.
If you know enough about the DC universe, it was pretty obvious, like, okay, this guy is Batman.
Who are you? I am Liu Kang.
It's awesome. This is the first game that I can actually tell my friends what I'm doing, and they flip out over. Like, they think it's amazing. They're like, Liu Kang, they know exactly who that is.
They called me and they're like, okay, so here's what the game is. It's a DC Mortal Kombat smash up. We've cast you in the role of Batman. Is that cool? Are you gonna be able to do that? Are you interested in that? It's like you know, freaking out on the phone, like, yes, I can do that. I think I can put that in my schedule.
It's a lot of fun, you know, being these powerful, dynamic women and being, you know, physically active in the scenes and doing fights and whatever. It's a lot of fun and an opportunity you don't often get to have.
It's such a pop culture icon. Like, how do you not know who Sub-Zero and who Scorpion is?
Yeah, I've been playing Mortal Kombat since I was a little kid, so to play a 6-foot Asian martial artist has always been my dream.
You know, I think we all got cast for a certain reason, that we inhabit some characteristics of these characters. We were also able to build on what was already there, but also bring a lot of our own style to these characters. So it's cool, you know, Scorpion is one thing, but he's also got a lot of characteristics that I bring to it. Same with Green Lantern, same with Kano. They're real free in letting you do what you want to do, but also, you know, have a definite vision in mind, and they're keeping true to that.
Okay, I give up!
I've heard that before.
It's kind of a hard medium to work in. They're just like some different challenges to get used to.
At first I was like, okay, wait, red lights everywhere. You see me at all angles. That's a little intimidating. But as soon as you kind of stood in that black pool, this room the size of a basketball court, black walls, red lights beaming into this performance space, you can't help but to feel like kind of the power of the performance.
I thought I defeated you, sorcerer. By the Elder Gods, I will finish you!
I've done a couple other games before, and this one was a lot more technical in that they were going for a specific look, like Liu Kang, the way he moved in other games. And, you know, he's a martial artist, so he has a particular stance and a particular way he moves. People playing the game before will recognize, so there's a little more work that goes into it, and that's why we've had a lot of in-depth rehearsals to try to get that just right.
It's like weird because it's like, okay, but move your hand like when that other guy says this, like, but I need you to see your hand move perfectly this way. Like, sync it up.
Relaying everything with your entire body up on stage, the way you stand and move, completely transfers to the motion capture.
Since you're not talking, you're not doing any acting with your voice, so you just have to relearn how to mimic along with someone who's, the voiceover character who's actually doing the character, and make your body match that and convey feelings and stuff just through your own body movement.
It was you. Your heat vision. You blasted Darkseid's boom tube and sent him hurtling into some unknown universe. This is all your fault.
You accuse me? You helped Darkseid invade the Earth, remember? Fight! 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 Fight!
Both of you calm down.
Awesome. It's like the best job ever.
Everyone at MK, they're very laid back, fun to work with. They've made this job a thing you look forward to. Why can't this be my 9 to 5,
There's no stress. Once you know what you're doing, once you get used to being in the suit and what you're supposed to do, it's a lot of fun.
The story of how the MK and DC universes come together could not be told without the cutscenes. There's so much mythology that's being dealt with in terms of what happened on each universe and when and how that caused these universes to be brought together. Also to see how the characters interact, not only the DC characters, which have their own rich history, as well as the MK characters, and then what happens to them when they're thrown in these situations and seeing things they've never seen before. When you have Sub-Zero show up in the Batcave for the first time, it really is kind of something, because clearly this is not something he's ever experienced, nor would the fans have ever expected to see. And it makes for some very interesting storytelling.
Your world is invading mine, affecting everything and everyone in it.
Every production starts with a script. You start with something that was written, thought out, figure out what the licensor wants, what the game team wants, and what we're able to do. Dominic worked with John Vogel on the game team to kind of flesh out the ideas and the story and to get marching orders for cinematics of what we need to do to work tightly with the game team.
My role is to basically come up with a storyline that will describe the events that are happening within the game.
Welcome, Sub-Zero, to the Netherrealm.
Quan Chi! There were rumors that the Elder Gods had punished you. I see the rumors were true.
Why the two universes have come together and how these characters can interact with each other and why they're fighting with each other. After me and the other guys finished writing the script, we gave it to the cinematics guys. And we kind of looked over the script again and made it a much more compact and powerful script.
My contribution was the format that the story is told. I wanted it to be in chapters because the player has to learn that character while he's playing it, and so we wanted to keep him with a familiar character for several fights and then move on to another character. The cutscenes set up all the fights and makes the player feel like he's actually involved and participating in the story.
We work closely with the game team. We try to take all their concerns into consideration and make sure that all those elements are met in the actual storytelling.
The storyboards really are the tool that we use to work with the game team to establish what the vision for the project is going to be. Vince Proce's storyboards were really critical in the early stages, sort of creating the mood of what we were trying to go for in the overall tone of the game.
There's a lot of detail that you can flesh out through the storyboards.
It's the first visual communication that we have with them to say, based on your script, this is what we're thinking about doing. Is this a direction that you want to go in? Vince's boards are very evocative of the overall mood we were trying to obtain for the cinemas in the game, and establishing the tension as these two universes are colliding with each other. Yes. Between the storyboards and the motion capture stage is where we do our 3D animatics, where we take the storyboards and come up with basically a movie of the movie.
This is the end, Shang Tsung. I will finish you!
Raiden, stop! Shang Tsung is not the enemy this time.
Step aside, Liu Kang!
No! I will not let you kill him!
Then you have turned your back on Earthrealm, broken your vow, and betrayed me!
Storyboards really get you about 50 to 60% of where you need to be to creating your final film. But until you actually have characters in a space, cameras that are working in a 3D environment, it's almost impossible to tell exactly what you need to have.
I don't have time for this.
Make the time.
For this game, we took a different approach in terms of casting for people to play the characters in our game.
In this production, we generated 120 minutes of content. A crucial part of that was to make sure that we hired really good actors that could learn the lines, execute, act, and be those characters. We actually had casting calls. We brought guys in, they had to be that character.
Because of the nature of this project and the secrecy with which the entire concept of the project was being maintained, the actors, when they were auditioning, had no idea what they were auditioning for.
We need prototypical superhero, but no one knows where he is.
We found an incredible guy to play Joker. We were really worried about Joker, but we found a guy named Circus, who was amazing. And it's funny that his name is Circus and he's playing a clown.
Circus Shalevsky. You know, I'm so sorry about the last time, running away and all. But you'll be happy to know it won't happen again.
As soon as we walked in, it was like, there's the Joker.
The actual professional actors really brought it to another level that we weren't able to achieve before.
Then we went to motion capture, which is the process of getting all of our actors onto the stage with the suits they have to wear with the markers so that we can record all of that data and then give it to our animators to work with.
When we go to the motion capture studio and we broadcast the 3D animatics, the actors basically look at that, figure out the timing, figure out the positions where they need to stand, and then we have the real recorded audio from the actors out in California where we recorded the audio.
Perfect. Let's get this to Luther. The hell with Bobby!
So the actors know how to time their communication with each other, they know how to time their gestures, time their movements, and then after that we start capturing.
It was incredible having some real actors this time around for motion capture. In past games, it's been me and Carlos. We were the actors.
Once we have all of the data in for motion capture, we have all of our performances, we then give all that raw data to our layout artists who are experienced in placing cameras and doing cinematography and editing, and they start pulling all that motion together and trying to match that animatic that we've created. And that process is not simply a cut and paste process. You know, for example, we have a wonderful actor who played the Joker in our game, and once he came into the audition and he nailed it, and we actually got to see what he could do, a lot of these shots we were planning on having very impactful close-ups of a character. It was clear that his physical performance was just so interesting that to be on a close-up, we'd miss out on 80% of what he was bringing to the equation. So that was all changed in the layout phase.
I don't know what Baraka's doing in Earthrealm, but it's suspicious.
Once we go through the layout phase, the next portion would be to take that raw motion capture data and hand it off to our animators. A big part of what the animation process is in this game is creating these superhero aspects to the characters that we can't possibly hope to capture on stage. You know, our actors don't fly, they don't deliver punches that send people flying 40 feet across rooms. And all that stuff has to be created by our animators and made believable by them. We really rely on that group of professionals to come up with those aspects, to give the comic book feel to this that we need to have in order for it to be believable and for all of our fans.
Some of my favorite things about the MK cinemas were definitely the special effects that we got to put in. One of the biggest special effects cinemas was when Raiden appears at the space station, right with Batman and Liu Kang. And as you can see, it's just large and powerful explosions, TV monitors exploding, a lot of lightning and whatnot going on. A lot of hard work went into creating every single effect, whether it was concepted from DC or internally. I hope it came across as something really spectacular in our cinemas.
One of the key moments in the cinematic scenes is when Liu Kang confronts Scorpion. And that's one of the first times that you actually see a transformation, a swapping of characters, so to speak, where the mixture of the Mortal Kombat and the DC universes together. So that scene was a really important one because it was one of the first times that the players is going to see an actual swapping of the characters, and what is Liu Kang's reaction going to be when he first encounters the Flash.
What happened? I feel so strange. I have seen this trick before.
I don't think that the story could be told without the cutscenes. There's an interaction between the characters. There's a lot of details that have to be told that you can't do in the context of a fighting game, just one-on-one, two people fighting. So there has to be moments where you tell the narrative of the story, and we do that fully in our cutscenes for the game. It's absolute necessity in telling the story for our game.
I think the cinematics do a really, really good job of sort of showing people who the characters are, that they're actually, people with personalities and depth to them. I think the cinematics group has done a great job of playing out the story that we put together.
I'm very happy with all the work that everybody's put into the cinemas for MK versus DC. I think we've got something that's going to be a lot of fun for the fans, and I hope that they are able to enjoy the story as well as kicking each other around as much as they do in the fighting mode of the game.
Yeah, anybody that knows MK knows the fans really like MK. So we really feel a lot of pressure to make sure we maintain the license integrity and the designer's integrity, because there's nothing worse than disappointing an MK fan. It could be brutal. It could be a fatality.
Fight. Fight. Fight.
Herman became the voice of Mortal Kombat, I think, on Mortal Kombat 4. That was the first game that he was the announcer.
Excellent. Excellent.
Herman has a very eccentric, quirky personality, so it's only fitting that he would be the voice of kind of Mortal Kombat. Just all he could sit there reciting like shampoo instructions, and he could make it interesting.
The Flash. The Flash.
I don't know who was the first one who thought that he would be a good, announcer, but at some point we pulled him into the studio, and it's been working ever since.
Flawless victory.
I believe there was someone involved in the studio, I think it may have been Dan, Toasty guy, asked me, because he had heard my voice in the hallways, and they just asked me, would you mind doing a take or two, just half an hour in the studio, whatever, it may come to something, it may not. And yeah, here I am, over a decade later, still doing, finish him, Brian Shard. There we go, that one works.
I love finish him. It's so, when he nails it, it's just dripping with power and disdain and...
Finish him.
He does have a vocal quality that is, different from anyone else's. It's very low and dulcet tones, if you will, but at the same time he has that little bit of hint of authority and evilness to it when he wants to bring turn it on.
Fatality.
Herman has a great voice, naturally, without doing anything to his voice at all. No processing, no pitch shifting, nothing. It is naturally deep and it's naturally low, and he's also enunciates his words very well. And hearing a voice that sounds like Herman's naturally as it is kind of gives an audio designer a lot of ideas creatively on what to do to his voice.
Brutality.
When you put a microphone up to it and you add a little echo, a little reverb, you just happen to get something that fits Mortal Kombat.
Baraka.
And in this particular case, especially with the next gen MK coming out, what we did is we made his voice surround sound.
Superman.
Everyone who ends up finding out about my participation in the game knows me as the voice of Mortal Kombat, but they're always surprised to actually find out that, I do work on the game as well. So yeah, the voice always seems to be the focus, but yeah, it's just like, you know the characters that you play as in the game? Oh yeah, I make those. You're like, really? oh wow, I thought you were always just the voice. And or not that just the voice is not enough, but wow, you do the characters too?
He's been part of the team since time immemorial, so he knows of which he speaks. He understands what the game looks like, what it should sound like.
Rich Carl wins. You like that one, huh?
Herman is a really fun guy to work with, and that makes everybody's job easier. When we see that we need to capture new announcer VO, it's not a chore, it's something you look forward to, and you know that he's going to be, Herman's going to be spot on. He doesn't need a lot of direction. He's done this for a long time, and so he's just going to get in there and boom it out, and we'll have some laughs while we're doing it.
Hey Herman.
Yeah.
You know what? I could use a new phone message.
Rich Carl is not available at the moment. Message. Message him.
Text him.
Text him.
Text him.
Text him.
He knows the character, and because in a sense that he's helped define that character. How he would laugh.
Throw some laughs in there. Okay. Finish him.
He's ready to go. He knows how far he's supposed to be away from the mic. He knows what sound, he knows how to dial it up right away.
You only get better with practice, is what I'm told. One day I'll nail this, guys. I'm sorry, give me a little time, some patience.
Recording sessions take just about as much time as it does for him to say the line once, maybe twice, all the way through. He delivers first time out, every time.
The Joker.
He's a really cool guy to do it with because, again, he's super lighthearted. He's always joking around.
Round 15.
And I think Herman adds personality to that voice.
How have you been since that evening? I've been meaning to call, really, but...
I don't think we've ever asked him to say strange things. I think sometimes in the course of reading a script, we'll throw out something ridiculous that usually some iteration of brutality or fatality.
Oh, we're gonna go back to the dark days? Babality. Babality. Desperation.
I guess for me, you'd have to be involved with him on the team to kind of get it, but to imagine him as this very dark, overlordy presence in the sound booth, and then it's just Herman, it's not Shao Kahn.
See ya.
What kind of video game mashup is interesting in its own right? In the sense that, you have this universe of MK, which has all these great characters and history around it and going behind it, and then you have this other history of the DC universe, which has been around even longer, which people have also great expectations. So you're trying to find a right way of blending it to make sense.
These are two separate licenses. The Mortal Kombat crew and the DC Universe crew, completely different characters, and getting them to get together and sort of create a story where they both kind of can work, interact, and destroy each other was a pretty big job. But that's what I kind of dig about doing this kind of work, is that it's something that's challenging.
A question that a lot of people keep asking me is, is this part of the canon of the MK world or the DC world? And the reality is, while based in those histories of those characters and the stories of those characters, they're not per se an extension of any current timeline, whether in the DC world or the MK world.
This game is set in the ultimate Elseworlds. It's the idea that, we're not going to take a specific time in the DCU because things change. So what we did is we created the classic characters, the characters at their best, at their peak. It's the characters that as a player. Even if you don't follow the comics, you definitely understand who these guys are and what they're doing.
It's kind of strange, really, working on these two licenses simultaneously and having to sort of serve two masters. We, on the MK side, have a lot of specific things that we're aiming for. We want this sort of brutal, violent story that, sort of interconnects all these different worlds. On the DC side, we want to really stay true to these characters that we don't really own.
It's really tough, to try to figure out, what will make sense, because you don't want to take some character or make Superman all of a sudden say, yeah, now he's vulnerable to, just an average person like Sub-Zero's uppercut. Why is he all of a sudden? Because before he could never take any damage. What's the reason? So, you're trying to find ways to blend the two universes, and we've kind of done that in our storyline to explain why certain characters have more abilities and why some characters' abilities have been kind of softened or dampened.
At the same time, you have to find these natural relationships between characters on different sides and figure out ways of balancing those relationships and balancing those powers and abilities and finding complements and finding natural nemeses between the two different sides, figuring out how to make everything kind of glue and fit together.
John Vogel and some of the other guys on the team would kind of get together in a room and they would kind of bang out all the details of how the story's going to work. They would define the big events that they wanted to happen. They would always say that they would write the beginning and write the end and then kind of combine the two together, and that was kind of how they would come up with the structure of what was taking place.
Figuring out how to get the two universes to come together in the storyline was not the hard part. That was kind of easy. We kind of came up with that concept really early on. And even what the bad guy was going to be, the concept for him was like the first day. We figured that out. The hard part was trying to create a story within the structure of the gameplay that we were trying to do.
My contribution was the format that the story is told in. I wanted it to be in chapters that were, starring one character. I didn't want to jump from Batman to the Flash to Green Lantern to Wonder Woman. I wanted to stick with the Flash for several fights because the player has to learn that character while he's playing it, and so we wanted to keep him with a familiar character for several fights and then move on to another character.
If you need a character to fight 4 times in a row, you pick 4 characters for him to fight against, or her, and you have to come up with, well, why does he fight these characters? And then when you have this next character that you fight as for 4 fights, what characters does that character fight against and why? And you really can't reuse the same characters that you just fought against. So fitting a story within the structure of the gameplay was a lot harder than coming up with the idea for how these two universes came together.
My involvement with the video game MK vs. the DCU was basically that Justin Gray and I, who's my writing partner, were brought in while the game was being in its infant stages to represent the DC side of the game, to make sure the characters were true, the dialogue was true, and the actions were true to the characters.
It was mostly to make sure that their characters and their world, the DC universe, was correct. Because we were going to mess something up. We don't know everything about the DC universe, and these two guys did.
DC worries about their characters. They babysit those characters, and that's why we were here, and then, of course, why the Mortal Kombat side was there as well.
If we had written Batman says such and such, and it doesn't sound like something Batman would say, they would rewrite the line to make sure that it sounded like something that Batman would say.
It was a big, overwhelming game. And I got to say, it was a great experience, but it's the first time we did something like this, and hopefully it's not the last.
Art style differs tremendously in this version of Mortal Kombat because it's our next generation Mortal Kombat.
We got the ability to make things so much more detailed and realistic. It's just a big step from our last games.
With the next-gen technology, we found it really liberating to make characters look the way we always wanted them to look, and the backgrounds look exactly the way we wanted them to look.
We've incorporated now the DC universe into the MK universe and trying to maintain the integrity of both.
The team's really stepped up, really to showcase what they can do because we have all these better tools. The look, I think, is dead on.
At the heart of it, it's still a Mortal Kombat game. It still feels like a Mortal Kombat game, and it looks like a Mortal Kombat game.
The importance of the pre-production concept art was pivotal for the creation of this project.
The concept art really helps to identify not only the look and feel, but a sense of space, sense of placement, specifically with environments.
I think the character concept stage was definitely one of the most integral parts of the development process. It really provided more of a solid foundation aesthetically for how we were going to proceed with the look of the game.
What it really does for me in particular as a materials lighting person is it establishes the look, the feel, the mood, and those things that you want to try to convey in the actual 3D world itself.
What concept does is they highlight the textures that we use and the materials we'll need and the effects we need, and they kind of really bring forward all the pieces that we'll need to make the level look the way we'd like it to look.
We're lucky to have a world-class concept team who not only understands the DC and MK lore, but they also understand what it takes to get concepts into gaming.
The art that was created by the concept team was a great inspiration for everybody. It provided the direction, the lighting, the mood, and it really made everybody kind of have the same vision of what this thing should look like. What is the perfect version of this? At the same time, it provided this amazing artwork for everybody to gush over.
It's such a huge mashup to have DC and Mortal Kombat characters on screen at the same time. So any kind of really high quality art that has those two universes together is going to become a collectible in some way, shape, or form at some point. I'm glad I have all of it saved.
The trick with making these backgrounds for Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe was that they are so incredibly detailed. You know, we literally needed an army of people to finish a background.
Some of the backgrounds or the environments that we've incorporated into MK versus DC started out with trying to maintain both universes. So some of the backgrounds that were identified early, the Batcave, Fortress of Solitude on the DC side, and then on the MK side, like the Throne Room or Hell, were things that we wanted to really kind of incorporate both worlds into the game.
For the environments, we carefully chose the most influential backgrounds from both universes.
For the Hell level, we started with a whole new process, and that was lay out the design, get Ed to approve the design, send it out to concept, have concept do it, bring it back, and then have the artist make the pieces. So I think Hell was like a really good proving ground for this is how good an MK level can be with this generation hardware, using a different process to assemble a level.
The amount of investment and care we put into making each piece. Because we have this technology, we're able to make even the most mundane things like stones on the ground look as good as they can. And we're really trying to get accuracy, realism, scale, all these things correct to make this the best looking MK ever.
The one that stands out to me is Metropolis. I was always excited about this ruined version of Metropolis after the big fight with Superman and Darkseid.
The concept department would usually start off with a blockout of a background, so the background's kind of, the basics are there, and they'll kind of do what you'll call a paint over, where we'll take a snapshot of the 3D background, so they'll kind of have the geometry in place. Then we'll take that and just kind of do a paint over on top of it and get more and more details.
The Metropolis level turned out to have multiple challenges. It was our first DC level that we were actually making. So the bar was a little bit high because there were a lot of expectations that were really high for how we could do this. That took a lot of back and forth between engineering and art and design, but I think the end result was fantastic. Batcave is 3 separate arenas. We have an upper arena that's kind of like the computer room arena. It has all his computers and his power supplies and a lot of monitors and everything that goes on his utility belt and extra suits and hats and cowls. And so that's the whole upper level. The mid level, we call it the airstrip level. It has a bat plane on one side, it has the traditional bat wing on the other side. If you have the planes, well, you got to have hangars to kind of hold them, and you have to have a route for them to get out, and so that looked really nice. And then the third level is the garage, and the garage is all the way on the bottom, so it has our version of the Batmobile, and we also have a bat boat down there. Lots of water effects, a lot of cave effects. You know, we have waterfalls and caustics from the water, and bats flying all over the place. So it was a tremendous amount of fun to make that level.
Our environments are very detailed, and kudos go to the team for that. They wanted to give the level of detail into the environments because they know that the MK and DC fan bases are very, very rabid. They're very into content. The consumer, after they play in a while, they're going to notice some things in the backgrounds that they might have not have noticed over the first month or two of playing the game. I mean, it's that level of detail. A lot of the environment artists are huge DC fans, so they want to be able to put in their little shouts out to the little things that they've always gravitated towards growing up.
Starting up on the game and starting up on the interpretation of these characters, we were trying to figure out what elements we can keep and subtract from each character set from the universes. Basically, it's bridging the gaps and establishing a middle ground between the two, where each one still retained their character and the essence of what that character is, but also would complement the other side.
It's the first representation that people have of Mortal Kombat characters in the next generation.
With Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, we've tried to get more of a realistic look to the characters, more realistic look to the backgrounds than previous games. We chose to kind of mute the colors a bit in this game just so it looks a little bit more real, have more digitized textures so the characters really look like human beings.
MK always had a very armored or very layered approach to their characters. Of course, with the superhero genre, there's the interpretation visually of it being pretty much a bodysuit and insignias and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of stripped down elements on the superhero side and a lot of layered, textured elements on MK.
The MK characters have definitely been updated. Well, obviously they have a lot more detail because of the next generation capabilities. You know, they've received kind of an overhaul. It's like Scorpion has got that really nice skull mask and everything. So just the level of detail is just steps above and beyond the previous titles. So people in the past might have noticed that Sony used to have a thong on, and this time we just added a tan line where the thong used to be. It's a little fun fact for you hardcore MK fans.
This was the first time that DC characters have been represented with as much detail and in 3D. You see Flash's costume, it's not just red, but it's a red texture on it. You come in close, you see details that you wouldn't have thought would be on a Batman costume, a Flash costume, a Green Lantern costume.
As far as the iconistic quality of the DC characters, we've tried to stay true to what that look and that feel is, and a lot of that we went back and forth with DC on. So they definitely want to maintain that quality and that identity of each character, but we've tried to push that a little bit more to MKIs, if you will, some of the DC characters, incorporating them into more of our view of what those characters might be.
That was a fun part of the game, was working with DC to decide what kind of features we want to bring out in these characters that everybody's used to seeing in some form, now in a really high resolution, high definition presentation.
This is the first time that the technology allowed us to capture all the detail that we could actually imagine in the characters. So this was actually the first time we were able to make characters look exactly as we imagined without any handicaps. From a character modeling standpoint, I think Baraka was probably the most interesting to model. On this game, we had the technology to capture very fine wrinkles and details in the characters that we weren't able to before. And so most of the characters that we have are mostly everyday people, but he's like one of the few creatures that we have where you can take advantage of wrinkles, very monstrous looking skin.
I worked on Catwoman, and that was actually a really fun challenge. I enjoyed working on her. She has such a rich history, so many different various interpretations of the character. It was a real challenge to try to pick the one. And so I think the costume that we chose, the more contemporary costume that she's wearing in the current books, worked out the best. She's got some nice accessories, a nice presence, some identifiable marks, the goggles and the zip cat suit, and there's a certain level of sexiness that's associated with the outfit as well, and it makes her seem very sleek and limber, and it complements the figure very well, so she's drawn well on the screen, and very identifiable silhouette. The catsuit just lent itself a lot to costume detail. I love to paint all the little folds and seams and things like that, and the surface tension of her catsuit just lent itself to the ability that I have, and the team members always heap upon me, "You're the wrinkle guy." So I went ahead and went to town on her, basically. Plus, she's just kind of a sexy, classic character to work on. It's nice to be able to say, hey, that one's mine.
The DC characters and MK characters have pretty different movesets in terms of their special moves. I mean, Superman's moves are never going to be shared on any other character. You don't want Superman to look like Superman. Batman has some stuff that he does with his cape specific to him. We like that we can tailor certain DC characters to look really cool and make those fans of those characters think, yeah, that's Batman, that's a Batman move.
Are the MK characters different in this game? Certainly. You got better models, new movesets. We're able to do more than we did in the last 3 years. Working with the DC characters, awesome. You grow up reading comic books, and you're like, oh, I need to make a move for Batman. I need to make a move for Superman. And you could only dream of doing a license like this.
The aspect I'm most proud of in this game would have to be just the overall look of it and the overall feel of it. And I think in this version, it's the most fluid game that we've come up with in this franchise. It looks realistic and it feels like real motion.
For everybody who's not aware of the process that goes into creating this game, the army of people that sweated over creating these beautiful environments, it's nothing like we've ever seen before, from the concept art to the models, the textures, all of the work that went into creating this game. I think, it's kind of a dream come true for all of us of Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe. Alex Ross is a very famous and very talented comic book artist who happens to be friends with a few members of the Mortal Kombat team. He went to school with him. And so we've always wanted to work with him, and finally we get a chance right now.
I am a comic book fan made good who got a chance to work in the field that I desired to since I was probably 3 years old. I've been working in comics as a painter, which I was trained to be at the American Academy of Art in Chicago. And the comics that I've done since I was 19 have been all painted illustration, and that's kind of my gimmick within the art form. And I still use actual paints on actual paper and airbrush and everything mixed in. My collaboration with Midway began with first hearing about the game from the guys working on it many months ago, and knowing it was a big secret at what was going to be accomplished. And at that time I had no idea that I could have anything to do with it, and I was always looking for a way that I could help them develop the character designs and costumes in whatever way that they were beginning work on it. And fortunately they came up with the idea all on their own to use me for this collector's edition box cover art. I've known much of the team for Mortal Kombat since I was a teenager. Going back 20 years ago, I met Tony Goski, John Vogel, John Tobias.
And it's funny, we actually went to art school together, and we're actually pretty good friends. We went to art school, we graduated around the same time at the American Academy of Art. So it's cool, we're finally working on the same project together, so, I mean, we've known each other for all these years, and I'm doing video games, he's always doing comics. Now they're kind of coming together, so it's pretty cool.
I knew about their first foray into working with computer games when they first got into the working field. I went into the field of advertising and ultimately comics, and they went pure digital, and I was always amazed with the developments that were happening in that field, and always impressed by the work that I was seeing these guys do. The invention of the Mortal Kombat game and characters is something that I feel particularly close to because of it speaks to me as a comic reader and creator, that I enjoy the kind of comic stylings of these boldly colorful characters. It's very much in keeping with the same way I approach designing characters as well. In contrast to the way the guys work in developing the game, I'm still using very old traditional tools of drawing on paper, painting on paper, and my most elaborate trick is the use of an airbrush. That's about as modern as I get. In many ways, what I do is similar to the way they used to work when they first started the game, where they were using live models wearing costumes. I came by to photograph a couple of the guys here as models for a couple of the characters on the MK side of things, just to get a sense of what that could add to the life of the game. I made a special point of getting the original model for Raiden to pose for me, since he works here anyways on the game. I thought that would be a cool thing. Given the number of years I've been working in comics, I've built up a lot of these things as being very special to my way of working, to get as photographic and as realistic as possible. And then I'll draw from that initial reference based upon my original sketch, which the original sketch I did is extremely tight, and I follow that as closely as possible. Then going into the painted stage, it's almost like I've got a picture in my mind where I know exactly what it should turn out like, and I'm comfortable now with where it's going to go. But generally, once shade and color are being applied, anything can happen. I did an entirely tonal painting in gray tones for the entire piece before putting in any aspect of color, to get all the rendering in, so that in a way the color stage is a final touch-up stage, and much of the hard work was just purely light and shadow. And I used an effect that I often, a little trick I use with sometimes space backgrounds, creating nebulas, where I've got this number of strings that are tied together that basically I hold over the piece, airbrush around my hand, catching a little bit of those strings, and then the leftover impression is something that looks like this beautiful soft fade kind of nebula. That on top of that I was spraying additional layers of harmonious color to pick up on whatever other light sources or commanding color that the scene seemed to implicate. Like I put in a lot of golden color from one light source, and then of course there was Green Lantern's ring, which is casting off this bright green glow, and then I'm using anything from just airbrushing straight onto the piece with a general glow to putting on pieces of paper to create a sort of ray effect that's coming off of the ring. It starts to get, in some ways, kind of technical as far as the effect of what that can look like, but I try and use the airbrush sparingly so it doesn't really overwhelm or completely take away from the human hand side of things. And that's hopefully what I'm completing at the end, is something that feels like it was the process of an organic gestation, something that feels very natural and real. And I was very pleased with the result of the final piece. I think it's a pretty decent painting for me, one of the best I've done in a while. It was fun to work with the friends of mine who've been working on Mortal Kombat for so many years, and to work with these characters that they've put a lot of time and attention to, and to try and respond to the things that they've done physically with both the DC and the MK characters, trying to incorporate much of their recent work to put their mark on both of these things. It's cool to have watched on the sidelines what these guys have been doing for so many years, and to have a chance to finally work with them in this capacity. I admire their work. I think that Mortal Kombat's a very cool game, and it's even cooler that I have some pride towards the people who I grew up with, who've invented and still create this game every couple of years, create a new one. I've known John Tobias since I was 18. When I first met or saw him at art school, he was the guy who was already doing what I wanted to do.
For Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe, I'm illustrating the collector's edition comic book. And that came about when Ed Boon actually gave me a call and asked me if I'd be interested, and my answer was yes.
We've kept in contact with John over the years, and we have lunch every once in a while and stuff. So, but we haven't worked with him in over 9 years. So, we were excited over the prospect of having John do our comic book. John is a great reputation with Mortal Kombat. He hasn't worked on a Mortal Kombat game in quite a while, so the timing just seemed perfect. It seemed like something that was destined to happen in my eyes.
When I was approached about doing the comic book, I had a lot of ideas, obviously. Thinking about all the different characters and how they could potentially relate to each other was fun. For this particular comic, the MK guys were interested in seeing all of the characters represented in some way in the book, and so it took a lot of back and forth to try to squeeze everybody in there. This sort of started out, as anything does, with a conversation about what direction we wanted to go, and I spoke with John Vogel on a number of occasions about what he wanted to do with the story.
Having John back in some form in the Mortal Kombat world is awesome. I'm glad he's doing this comic book. When we did the first Mortal Kombat, we made a comic book as well. John drew it, he wrote and drew the comic book. I colored some of it, he colored some of it. John Tobias created everything that I've been working on for the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And for him to come back and then, you know, see what I've done and go, okay, yeah, that's cool, and you know, that's an interesting way to go, and you know, to collaborate with him again is really, it's amazing. You know, it's a nice feeling.
I haven't touched Mortal Kombat in a long time, and so having an opportunity to sort of revisit the characters was very exciting for me. Drawing them came naturally. I mean, the moment that I started sketching the interior of the collector's edition comic book, everything just sort of came right out. It felt like I was at home. Being able to draw the Mortal Kombat characters along with the DC characters, for me, has been a dream come true. It's something that I would never have envisioned happening when we created this series, you know, back in the early 90s. And so being able to participate has been a lot of fun, and I enjoyed working with the guys again on the product. And like I say, it has been very enjoyable, and I think I'm very happy with the end result.